My cruel husband's fury reached its peak as he shoved me into the pool with unrelenting force. The icy water swallowed me instantly, shocking every nerve in my body. I fought to surface, but his hands were there again, pushing me back under. As I gasped for air, my 8-month pregnant body weighed me down, making each movement a desperate struggle. His rage-filled voice thundered above me, "You'll regret this." And then, what happened next was so shocking, so beyond belief, that it changed everything forever. Hello, my name is La, and I never thought my life would spiral into this chaos. I'm 30 years old, living in suburban Dallas, and 8 months pregnant with my first child. This should be the happiest time of my life, yet I find myself running from a man I once trusted with my whole heart. 5 years ago, Ryan was everything I dreamed of in a partner. Charming, ambitious, and endlessly supportive. He worked in real estate, and his confidence swept me off my feet. We met at a mutual friend's wedding, and within a year we were married. Our life together seemed perfect. We bought a beautiful home, shared dreams of a family, and promised each other a lifetime of love and loyalty. But promises are fragile. Over the past year, I've watched the man I married fade into someone I barely recognize. It started with small things. His irritation at minor inconveniences, long hours at work, and unexplained absences. When I told him I was pregnant, I thought it would bring us closer, but instead, it drove a wedge between us. His enthusiasm felt forced, and as the months went on, his frustrations grew. Now, the man who once promised to protect me has become my greatest threat. I thought I knew him, but the Ryan I see today is consumed by anger and betrayal. I don't recognize his face anymore, and I'm left wondering how I ever trusted him with my heart and my life. I met Ryan at a charity gala, the kind of event where everyone wears their best masks, both literal and figurative. But Ryan's charm felt genuine. He had this magnetic presence, effortlessly commanding the room with his confident smile and easy laughter. I was captivated, swept into a whirlwind romance that felt like the beginning of a fairy tale. Within months, we were inseparable. Ryan's ambition and confidence matched my own dreams of a stable and loving future. He worked as a rising star in real estate, and his vision for success seemed limitless. He talked about the family he wanted to build, the adventures we'd share, and the legacy we'd leave behind. It was intoxicating, and I fell hard. A year later, we stood at the altar surrounded by family and friends, promising each other a lifetime of love and loyalty. Our first year of marriage felt like everything I had ever hoped for. We moved into a beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood filled with the potential for a happy future. I stayed home, making our house a home while Ryan excelled in his career. In those early days, Ryan was attentive and caring. He made me feel like I was the most important person in his life. Looking back now, I wonder if it was all an illusion, a carefully crafted image of the man he wanted me to see. Because the Ryan I married doesn't exist anymore. Instead, I'm left with a stranger. At first, the changes were subtle, easy to dismiss. Ryan would come home later than usual, claiming work had become more demanding. His once effortless charm started giving way to short tempers and irritated sighs over the smallest things. I told myself it was just stress, something we'd work through together. But as the weeks turned into months, the cracks in our foundation widened. Ryan stopped sharing his days with me. Conversations became strained, filled with curt replies or heavy silences. I started noticing how his phone was always glued to his hand, the screen tilted away from me. If I asked about it, his frustration would flare, brushing me off as too controlling. When I told him I was pregnant, I expected joy, maybe even relief that we were finally starting the family we'd always talked about. Instead, his reaction was lukewarm at best. A brief hug and a mumbled, "That's great." I told myself he just needed time to process the news, but deep down, I felt the distance between us growing. As my pregnancy progressed, so did Ryan's coldness. He'd avoided discussing the baby, brushed off my excitement over ultrasounds, and acted as though the impending arrival was a burden, not a blessing. I found myself alone, caring not just for our child, but for the weight of our unraveling marriage. The man who once promised me the world had disappeared, replaced by someone I could barely recognize. And yet, I kept holding on, hoping somehow things would get better. The credit card statement came late that evening, tucked into a stack of mail I'd been meaning to sort through. I almost didn't notice it, but when I opened the envelope, the charge leaped off the page. $1,800 for a purchase I hadn't made. My heart sank as I read the details: a high-end jewelry store, a purchase date that coincided with one of Ryan's many late nights at work. At first, I told myself there must be some mistake. Maybe the bank had mixed up the transactions. But as I dug deeper, my denial crumbled. A quick call to the store confirmed the truth. Ryan had used my credit card to buy a gold necklace. It wasn't just the money that stung. It was the betrayal. The next piece of the puzzle came when I found the receipt carelessly shoved into his office drawer. The necklace wasn't for me. I didn't need to see a name to know what it meant. Someone else. He had stolen my card to buy an extravagant gift for another woman. I sat there, my hands trembling with rage and disbelief. How could he do this to me, to us, to our unborn child? The betrayal was a knife twisting in my chest, each detail cutting deeper. That night, as I stared at the statement and receipt, one thought consumed me. I needed answers, and I would get them no matter what it took. Ryan would have to face me and explain himself. I waited for Ryan to come home, pacing by the pool in the cool evening air. The evidence, the credit card statement, and the receipt, sat in my trembling hands. My heart pounded with a mixture of anger and fear. I wasn't sure how he'd react, but I couldn't ignore this. Not anymore. When he finally arrived, his steps were slow, his expression guarded. He must have sensed my mood from the moment he saw me. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice sharp and already defensive. I held up the papers. "Explain this," I said, my voice trembling but firm. He glanced at them, his face tightening. "It's nothing," he muttered, turning away. "It's not nothing, Ryan," I snapped, stepping closer. "A $1,800 charge on my card, and for what? A necklace for someone else." My voice broke on the last words, tears welling in my eyes. He turned back, his face a mask of anger. "You've been snooping through my things," he accused, ignoring the question entirely. "Snooping? You stole from me, Ryan," I shouted. "You used my card to buy a gift for someone else while I'm here, 8 months pregnant, trying to hold us together." When I said I'd cancel the card and report the theft, his rage boiled over. "You're not canceling anything," he roared, shoving me hard. I stumbled, my world tilting as I plunged into the pool. The water closed over me, shock and cold stealing my breath as the fight turned terrifyingly real. The water was an icy shock, stealing my breath as I hit the surface and plunged beneath. My arms flailed, desperate to break free, to reach the air above. But before I could find my footing, Ryan's hands were on me. He shoved me back down, his grip strong, his voice a mix of rage and threats. "You think you can ruin me," he snarled, his face looming above as I clawed at the water. "You think you're in control." I gasped, breaking the surface for a split second before he forced me under again. The weight of my pregnancy made everything harder. My body felt heavy, my movements sluggish. Panic gripped me as my lungs screamed for air. Every kick, every thrash felt weaker than the last, and I could feel the life inside me, a tiny flicker, pulling me to keep going. "Ryan, please," I managed to cry out during a brief moment above the surface. My plea only seemed to fuel his anger. "You're not going to report me," he roared, his voice a terrifying echo in the night. "You'll regret it if you try." His threats rang in my ears as I struggled, but something inside me shifted. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for my baby. Summoning all the strength I had, I waited for a moment when his grip loosened. With a desperate lunge, I broke free, clawing at the pool's edge and pulling myself out, drenched, shivering, and gasping for breath. I stumbled to my feet. He shouted after me, but I didn't look back. Every step away from that pool felt like reclaiming my life. I ran, driven by pure survival instinct, knowing I had to get away no matter what. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me, every step sending a jolt through my exhausted body. My soaked clothes clung to my skin, and the night air bit sharply against me. My heart pounded, not just from exertion but from the sheer terror of what I had just escaped. I didn't dare look back. Ryan's shouts faded as I reached my car, fumbling with the keys, my hands trembling uncontrollably. I slid into the driver's seat and locked the doors, gasping for breath. The dashboard lights illuminated the soaked evidence still clutched in my hand. The credit card statement and the damning receipt, proof of his betrayal and violence. I drove without a plan, my mind racing. I needed a place to think, to regroup, to feel safe. The first person who came to mind was Maya, my best friend. She had always been my rock, my voice of reason. I trusted her more than anyone else. When I arrived at Maya's house, I stumbled to her door, tears streaming down my face. She opened it within seconds, her eyes widening in shock. "La, what happened?" she asked, pulling me inside. I collapsed on her couch, trembling and unable to stop crying. Between sobs, I recounted everything: the stolen credit card, the fight by the pool, Ryan's threats, and his terrifying attempt to drown me. Maya listened, her face growing darker with each word. "You can't go back there," she said firmly. "We need to call the police." For the first time in hours, I felt like I wasn't alone. The next morning, with Maya by my side, I walked into the local police station. My body still itched from the struggle, and every movement reminded me of the nightmare I had escaped. Clutching the evidence in my hands, I took a deep breath and stepped up to the front desk. "I need to report an assault," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. The officer on duty listened as I recounted the events of the previous night. I handed over the credit card statement and the receipt, explaining how Ryan had stolen my card and used it to buy the gold necklace. Then, with my voice shaking, I described how he pushed me into the pool and tried to drown me. The officer's expression hardened. "This is serious," she said, taking down every detail. "We'll file charges for assault and theft. Do you have a safe place to stay?" I nodded. "I'm with a friend," I replied, glancing at Maya, who gave me an encouraging smile. Later that day, my lawyer Claire arrived to help me file for a restraining order. She assured me that Ryan would face consequences for his actions. "We'll start divorce proceedings immediately," she said, "and we'll make sure you and your baby are protected." By evening, the police had arrested Ryan. When I heard the news, I felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief that he was no longer a direct threat, but fear of what lay ahead. I knew this was only the beginning of a long battle. With Maya's unwavering support and Claire's expertise, I resolved to see it through, not just for me, but for my unborn child. The courtroom felt cold and impersonal, but I sat tall, determined to face Ryan one last time. My lawyer Claire had prepared me for this day, walking me through every detail of the case. The evidence we had, the credit card statement, the receipt, and my testimony was solid, but the most damning piece of evidence came from the medical report confirming the bruises on my arms, along with Maya's statement about my condition when I arrived at her house that night. Ryan entered the courtroom in handcuffs, his once confident demeanor replaced by a subdued, guarded expression. He avoided my eyes, but I kept my gaze steady. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the safety of my unborn child and my right to live free from fear. The trial was grueling. Ryan's lawyer tried to paint me as an overly emotional, irrational wife who had exaggerated the events, but Claire dismantled their arguments with precision. Witnesses like Maya and the officers who arrested Ryan testified on my behalf, solidifying my case. When it was my turn to speak, I described the night by the pool in vivid detail. My voice was steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. I spoke not only of the physical pain but of the emotional betrayal it had led to that moment. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. Ryan was sentenced to 2 years in prison for assault and theft, with mandatory anger management sessions. The divorce was finalized, and I was granted full custody of my unborn child with no visitation rights for Ryan. As I walked out of the courtroom, the weight on my shoulders began to lift. Justice had been served, and I was finally free to start anew. Just days after the court's ruling, I went into labor. It wasn't the peaceful, carefully planned experience I had envisioned months ago, but it was filled with a different kind of strength. Maya stayed by my side through every contraction, holding my hand as I brought my baby boy into the world. When the nurse placed him in my arms, tears streamed down my face. He was perfect tiny fingers, a soft cry, and a warmth that filled my heart in a way I'd never known. "Leo," I whispered. "Your name is Leo, my little light." Holding Leo, I felt the first real sense of peace I'd had in months. Everything I had endured, the pain, the fear, the struggle had been worth it to ensure he would grow up safe and loved. He was the reason I had fought so hard, and now he was here. Maya helped me settle into a quiet routine during those early days. Her home became a sanctuary where I could focus on caring for Leo and healing from the trauma of the past. Late nights of feedings and early mornings with his soft coos gave me purpose. Each day I grew stronger, more confident in my ability to give him the life he deserved. The weight of Ryan's presence in my life began to fade. Leo represented a fresh start, a chance to build a future free from fear and filled with unconditional love. Together, we were embarking on a new chapter, one filled with hope. The days turned into weeks, and life began to take on a rhythm, a peaceful one. My focus was on Leo, whose bright eyes and soft giggles became the center of my world. Each moment with him reminded me of the strength I had found to leave behind the darkness and fight for a brighter future. Maya continued to be my rock, offering support during sleepless nights and busy days. Her home, once a temporary refuge, became a place of healing and growth. I spent my days bonding with Leo, rediscovering myself, and making plans for our future. Claire, my lawyer, helped finalize the legalities of my divorce. With Ryan's sentencing and the court's decision, I knew he was no longer a threat to us. The weight of his influence, once suffocating, had lifted. Therapy sessions became part of my routine, helping me unpack the trauma and build tools to move forward. Eventually, I found a small apartment, cozy and filled with light, a fresh start for me and Leo. I hung photos on the walls, capturing the first smiles and milestones of my baby boy. My life wasn't extravagant, but it was ours and it was safe. As I sat one evening, watching Leo sleep peacefully, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. I had faced betrayal, fear, and pain, but I had also found resilience, hope, and love. The chapter with Ryan was closed, and ahead of me was a story of strength and new beginnings. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey through Lila's story. If you enjoyed this tale of resilience, betrayal, and new beginnings, don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective on Lila's incredible transformation and the challenges she overcame. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more captivating stories of courage, strength, and hope. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue creating stories that inspire and move hearts. Thank you for being part of our storytelling community.